What's going on, family? Media would have you believe that Matt Ryan was non-committal to Kyle Pitts. But I got receipts. Up into the Bird Bath. What's going on, family? It's your boy Steve-O the C Mental checking in with another Falcons Bird Bath All Game Official. Stay tuned with us. I had what I wanted for you guys to be a great breakdown of Kyle Pitts and what his actual debunking some things about Kyle Pitts. But we're going to go ahead and move forward and talk a little bit about the press conference that happened today with Ian Cunningham. And give me 1 second, if you will. So today, they had the press conference for Ian Cunningham and Matt Ryan. And they talked a bit about some of the key points and some of the key things that we could expect out of this regime moving forward. I kind of want to go into a little bit of that in detail for you guys real quick. First and foremost, when they asked Matt Ryan and Ian Cunningham, would Michael Penix be the starter this year, they said, we are not the coach of this team, which is very different, vastly different from somebody saying that they're non-committal about Michael Penix being the quarterback of this team moving forward. We heard Arthur Blank say earlier in the offseason that Michael Penix was the starting quarterback for this team. He was the future franchise quarterback. But Matt Ryan, being a very smart former player and now de facto GM, which I'll get to in a second, because he's the team president, but he's a little bit more like a GM. It's kind of a GM by committee. But what that says is not that they are not committing to Michael Penix Jr., but more so that Matt Ryan is going to allow Ian Cunningham, and more importantly, he's going to allow Kevin Stefanski to go out here and do his thing and cook and be the coach of this team and evaluate players to the best of his ability. And again, that's very vastly different than not committing to him right now. I believe that the Falcons are probably going to move forward in the offseason as if Michael Penix Jr. is the future with this franchise. A few other key takeaways. Honestly, I feel as though Matt Ryan is more so the de facto GM, more in direction and vision of this team. Whereas Ian Cunningham is more of a scouting aficionado. More, I want to say a guru, but he's more about the scouting and talent and a little bit less emphasis on the cap, but more on evaluation of players and what players can do and bring to the table. He's been a person who he spoke extensively during the press conference about how he learned from former GMs and Ozzie Newsome and learned from the GM over there in Philly as well too, with the Eagles. And he was a part of 2 championship runs, one each with both of those teams. So his specialty is with learning how to scout. He said Ozzie Newsome taught him greatly in depth how to be able to scout. A few other takeaways. Their core philosophies are going to be the ability to pivot when necessary and to be a very disciplined team and making sure that they move forward and executing the game plan, but not being afraid of pivoting off of something whenever they need to make the appropriate changes. And that's been something that's been an issue in the past, not only with Terry Fontenot, but also with Raheem Morris. This team has been not as disciplined with making sure that they build right now without sacrificing for the future. And that was something that he definitely spoke about as well, too. Not having too many, you can never have too many draft picks, and not giving up and not mortgaging the future in order to build for right now. They also talked about team identity being more of a build inside the trenches, starting up front. They want to be a tough and physical team that's also smart. They talked about coming off of that Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells, Tom Coughlin coaching tree. Both Matt Ryan and Ian Cunningham had coaches in college who came off of that Belichick tree. The Tom Coughlin and Bill Parcells team. This team wants to really be a physical meat and potatoes football team that's going to go out here and execute and play very physical. I think their eyes lit up very much so when they heard Kevin Stefanski talk about how they want to be a team that really runs the ball and that they're going to fire off and utilize those offensive linemen to be very physical moving forward. And that's something that we've heard a lot. We hear a lot of teams talk about being physical, but you could tell that this team really wants to dedicate itself towards physicality. I believe that they are definitely going to try to build themselves in the trenches. If you look at Baltimore and Philly in past years, these have been teams that have been built for cold weather, which means that they want to make sure that they have running attacks. They want to have really good rushing attacks. When you look at both of Baltimore's Super Bowl victories, and if you look at both of Philly's Super Bowl victories, those were teams that played good defense. They were built in the trenches with their offense, but also built in the trenches in their front seven with their defense. They played good defense and they ran the football. Going back to when there was Jamal Lewis, and going back to when they had Ray Rice out there in Baltimore, going back to the Philly team, their first Super Bowl when they played against the Patriots. They had a nice running back by committee, but they had 200 yards in that Super Bowl. And then as of recently, just last year, they had Saquon Barkley out there as a physical rushing attack. And when they were able to shut down Saquon Barkley, then they were able to go over top and be able to, get some passing yards. Have Jalen Hurts be able to run the football as effectively as well himself. Be able to do a little bit of option, but also just be able to hit key throws and take what the defense gives you. It's not the most prettiest thing, but they had guys up front and they could rush four to be able to get after the passer. I believe that with the way this team is built now, we have a defense that you can rush for and be able to get after the passer at all times. And we can do it with a lot of zone blitzing. This team is very much so built in a manner in which we can go out here and bring blitzes from several different places. We can bring it off the edge. We can bring it at the middle. We have guys that can play multiple fronts. We have guys who can play very versatile football. And I believe that that's going to be a hallmark of this team as well, playing very versatile football, not only on offense, but also on defense especially. This team, I believe, is going to be the type of team moving forward that is going to be able to get the most out of their players by maintaining and keeping their players in the draft. That was a huge part. One of the things I loved the most was that they wanted to be able to draft and maintain and retain those players that they had and sign their own and be able to get those draft picks to sign their second contract with them after their rookie deals are up. So fifth-year options on first-round draft picks, or at least signing extensions, and also with your second and third and fourth round picks, all those guys beyond who are on 4-year deals, being able to make sure that you re-sign the talent that is, talent that you don't want to have leaving the building. So I think there's a lot to look forward to. You guys can go and check out the presser. I don't want to get into all the details of everything they had there, but there's a lot to like at what it is that they were saying out there. And again, one thing that I love is that Matt Ryan and Ian Cunningham are going to allow Stefanski to coach this team to the best of his ability. And I really want to drive home the fact that Matt Ryan essentially is the de facto GM, and having our GM right now is more like having a guru at scouting, if you will, which is Ian Cunningham's specialty. That's something that Matt Ryan doesn't necessarily excel at, and that's not something that he's as experienced with. So that's what I think we can look forward to in the future. Shout out to the chat. Wallace Smith says, what's good with you? Hey, bro, nothing much, man. I'm all hopped up on Granddaddy Mims, drinking cerveza, loving life, loving football, getting ready for the offseason. Now, as I said to you guys, I wanted to do a little film breakdown on Kyle Pitts I wanted to debunk the idea that Kyle Pitts is not a good run blocker. And we're going to see if that's going to work real quick. If not, we will keep it pushing and we will move right along on to the next uh, string of events. And we'll skip the film study and we'll go more so into the free agency. But I'm going to see if I can actually pull up this Kyle Pitts tape. I've had a little bit of an issue with the All 22 from NFL.com, and I'm not going to bring that up on the screen yet. I'm just going to see if that works for us. And it looks like I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty with that All 22. Can't really mess with the shield too much, but tap in with us later on today or tomorrow, and depending on whenever you're watching this, I promise you, I will be getting you footage on Kyle Pitts. A lot of people say that Kyle Pitts is not a good blocker, or they say that he's a terrible blocker now, and I think that that's lazy analysis. That's a narrative that I will definitely be debunking in the near future for you guys, as soon as in the next few hours. I believe that Kyle Pitts has definitely become a much better run blocker. And I didn't even make it out of the first two games of the season from the 2025 season, where I believe that was Tampa Bay and the Minnesota Vikings. And in those games, I didn't even get out of the second quarter. I didn't even get out all the way out of the second quarter of the Minnesota game to show you. I think I had about 16 or 17 plays alone where they ran the ball to Kyle Pitts' side. And we're able to get good chunk yardage and make big plays, or there was no gain and Kyle Pitts' man was not the person who made the play on the ball. So stay tuned for that. You're going to be in for a real treat. And then there's also another play, a few plays in there where you can see that they should have thrown the ball to Kyle Pitts. So I saw a post today, and what triggered me to want to really go into this, there was a group discussion in one of the Facebook groups that I was in where the people were saying, get rid of Kyle Pitts, right, and go draft a guy. And that Kyle Pitts wasn't worth elite tight end money. I don't know how you don't give him elite tight end money. If I didn't tell you that his name was Kyle Pitts and I just said, hey, there is a guy who had 1,000 yards his rookie year, got hurt in his second year before the season was out, and then the next 2 years, while he was still kind of rehabbing and getting back into the swing of things, his floor was around 600 yards, then 650 yards in his third and fourth year. And then in his fifth year, when they extended him on the fifth year option, he turned around and he made All Pro. So he made Pro Bowl the first year, made Pro Bowl and All Pro his fifth year, and he had 900 something yards. You would tell me that a guy who has a floor of around 600 yards when playing and 1,000 yards as a ceiling, you would say that that's a guy who's an elite tight end in this league and that you cannot let him walk out the building. And I don't know how you would even fathom to replace that type of production. If we let go of Kyle Pitts, we would be needing to replace him. And I'm not also sure that you could actually replace that type of production or the ceiling and upside that he has with just any old person in this league. The next tight end underneath him, I think, was Juwan Johnson. That was number 3 tight end in receiving, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was Trey McBride, then Kyle Pitts, then Juwan Johnson. The next available tight end only had 700 yards. And that's not chopped liver, but Kyle Pitts can do that in his sleep. I just don't think that you could replace that easily. I saw also the reason that post was made was that they were saying, hey, let go of Pitts and sign David Njoku. If you think you're going to be overpaying Kyle Pitts at $16 million, which is around the franchise mark that he would get if you tagged him, and around the top tier tight end money, he's probably going to reset the market, and we're probably going to tag him. But if you think that's overpaying him, you definitely be overpaying David Njoku at $8 million, because we just got done, and that's around the price that David Njoku was going to be commanding this year, between $8 and $10 million this year. Honestly, Kyle Pitts just recently was making around $8 million in his last year of his contract, and David Njoku, who was up in Cleveland, I think he was getting around $13 million. And Harold Fannin was a guy that they drafted in the third round who outperformed him. He more than doubled his production. And again, that was a third round rookie who, even though David Njoku is an athletic beast, he's a guy who stretches the field. He's a good receiving tight end and a pretty solid blocker. He still didn't outperform him. And honestly, if he had outperformed the rookie, there's no way that they would be letting him walk this year, and this wouldn't even be a discussion. So just keep that in mind. Shout out to the chat again. DJ Von Go, DJ Van Go. Much love, brother. Let's go ATL. Let's go, yes, sir, indeed. We're gonna keep it pushing though. Like I said, stay tuned later on today or tomorrow. I'm gonna be hitting you guys with a film breakdown on Kyle Pitts, showing you and debunking the facts versus fiction, or the facts versus feelings that Kyle Pitts is actually a much improved blocker, and that's why we can't let him leave the building. And moving on, that brings me to free agency. Uh, there are a few players in early free agency that I have on my wish list that I would love for us to be able to sign. And I want you guys out there to let me know who you'd like for us to sign and what direction you would like for us to go. Let me know in the chat, either in the live chat or comment on the video once it's completely uploaded on the video on demand. But who are some of the players that you guys want to see in free agency? Now, I compiled a list of a few guys that I want, and I kind of and I have some of what I think are the projected market values. Again, some of this is fluid and some of this has changed a little bit. But first and foremost, one of the players I really like the most is Rashid Shaheed. He's a guy that I'd love to see us get at the wide receiver position. Also, Christian Kirk. Now, Rashid Shaheed, he's a guy who he was traded later in the year to the Seahawks, and they're in the Super Bowl right now. He didn't do a ton of production once he got to the Seahawks, but he's a guy who has been very vital to the pass game, and he scored receiving touchdowns, but he's also scored touchdowns in the special teams game. And if we were able to sign someone like Rashid Shaheed, he would definitely fill multiple positions for us. One, as a deep receiver and being able to stretch the field for us. And remember, he was with the Saints. He was a guy that gave us fits. He was a guy that we had to definitely game plan for. And I believe that if we had Rashid Shaheed out here, Michael Penix would definitely be able to utilize his skill sets as a deep passer on play action passes. And Rashid Shaheed is a guy that would not command a ton of targets to be as effective with his targets and to be rewarding whenever you throw the ball his way. But he could command a little bit more than we would like. I'm not 100% sure, but he could easily get somewhere in the $14 million range, or somewhere in the 12 to maybe $17 million range this year. Christian Kirk is a guy who was hurt last year with the Texans, and he would probably be on a prove it deal. I would love to get him in here. He'd be 29 years old. He'd be a guy that we wouldn't have to feature as well, but still wants to have something toward his legacy. He's been very productive over the years. And again, he can play out of the slot. He's a deep threat. He can play out of the slot, but he can also play on the perimeter as well, too, for you. Tyquan Thornton, he's a guy who would be also pretty much on a prove it deal. Again, he's a guy that he was drafted by the Patriots, but he played in Kansas City this past season, and he's still a young, speedy receiver. I believe he has like 4.2 speed. He's not known for dropping a lot of passes, and he himself would also be on a prove it deal. He'd probably be somewhere more in the range of 5 to 8 million, and I could get with that. Wan'Dale Robinson is a guy. He played for the Giants this past year, and this was his last season. He was a second-round draft pick, never really lived up to a ton of hype, but he actually had to step into more of a top-end role once Malik Neighbors was injured this year. But he could command a lot more because he definitely showed out once Malik Neighbors went down. I think that, and again, this is a speculation, but he could probably be somewhere in the range of 17 million, which is why he's not as much of a desire for me to go with 100% off top. Romeo Dobbs and Jahan Dotson are also two other guys that I would love for us to go after. Now, Jahan Dotson was a former first round pick, and Romeo Dobbs, I believe, was a second round pick. Both of those guys have had a little bit of issues with some drops here and there. So that's why I'm a little bit iffy about them. But all these guys are much more improved options than any of the number two receivers or the number three receivers that we have on the team at this time. And I wouldn't be surprised if we let go of Darnell Mooney. But if we could keep Mooney and sign one of these guys and just add a little bit more depth at our wide receiver position, um, just some value depth, I believe that that's more of in the line of where we want to go with this team moving forward. Michael Penix definitely needs guys that can stretch the field. And those are some guys who have a lot of speed out there that can stretch the field for us and help out Michael Penix as a young quarterback because I believe that with this rushing attack, we're definitely going to do a lot more play action. A few other names out here on the list. I'd love to see a quarterback, Joe Flacco, Jameis Winston, or maybe even Geno Smith. These are guys who are journeyman quarterbacks. They're a little long in the tooth. They're older. They're veterans. But I believe that all three of those guys would be very welcoming of coming in and stepping into a role as a backup and trying to show Michael Penix the ropes a little bit more. I think that Michael Penix is a very likable guy. And these are pretty likable guys themselves as well, too. And they're guys who've had to overcome a lot of adversity in this league, not necessarily been elite quarterbacks. Geno is a former first round draft pick. Jameis Winston is a former first round draft pick. But I believe that they have a lot of life lessons to impart on these guys, and they know their stuff. They know the game pretty well. And they've stepped in and been viable starters or actually been Pro Bowl players at different points of their career, all three of those guys. So I wouldn't be upset about signing one of those guys if we're not able to get something worked out with Kirk Cousins. I'd love to bring back Kirk Cousins, but I believe that these guys might have a little bit more left in their tank than Kirk Cousins. And I honestly believe that Kirk Cousins is probably going to go and move over to television. More so what I loved in the quarterback, though, there's some guys on that defense that I love to be able to bring about. Now, there's some running backs, J.K. Dobbins, Brian Robinson, Kenneth Gainwell, and those are guys that I would love to see us come out with if we cannot sign, if we can't find or work out a deal uh, with Tyler Allgeier. But I believe that Tyler Allgeier will probably command somewhere in the similar ballpark as some of those guys. Uh, J.K. Dobbins is a guy who's had a little bit of injury history. Brian Robinson is a guy that I would love to see if we could maybe be able to get over there. Maybe even Kenneth Gainwell. He's a great receiving back out of the backfield, but he also did a lot in between the tackles and was really good for the Pittsburgh Steelers this past year when Jalen Warren got hurt for a few games. And Arthur Smith loved to give him the ball a lot. I believe that he's a guy that could come in and definitely fill in for a good amount of the time. And maybe we might be able to draft us somebody in the rookie class. There are a few running backs coming out, and then you're always able to get some late round draft picks that are running backs and get some talent in that, in the maybe third through fifth or sixth rounds. Tyler Allgeier, if I'm not mistaken, was a fifth round draft pick. But I would love to first to be able to bring back Tyler Allgeier, and he's a guy that we're going to touch on a little bit later in the show. Stay tuned as we bring in some of the Falcons facts that I have with Steve Hightower. You're in for a treat with that. But back to some of the other guys that I'm looking at in free agency. Defensively, on the line, Kyrie's, Kyrie's Tonga, Samoan defensive tackle who's a nose tackle. Big, beefy, hefty guy, 340 something pounds. Plays for the New England Patriots. He's a guy that could definitely give us some great minutes and a lot of snaps as a run stuffer. Uh, there's no secret that we are looking at David Onyemata as one of our potential free agents. He's a guy that we need to try to work out some deal to re-sign him. We might not be able to though, and I'm not sure what he's going to command specifically on the open market. He might command a little bit more, uh, uh, not just a little bit more, but I think he might command a substantial a bit more than Tonga would, and I believe that he might definitely, without a doubt, probably command a little bit more than someone like Daquan Jones. Daquan Jones is a guy who's a nose tackle that we could also use as well too. This Falcons team has been great at getting at pass rushing this year, but I would love for us to be able to cycle in a few guys who could Go out here and stuff the run and play stout in there against the run. You can never have too much depth on your defensive line. And we heard Nate Ollie say in the offseason this past year in training camp that they wanted just having guys GTFO. Just get after them. Get after that ass. You want guys who could go for 3 or 4, maybe 5 snaps all out at 100% and then be able to rotate and cycle those guys on. Not only on the edge, he's talking about on the edge, but you want to also be able to do that with your interior guys. And we had a little bit of injuries with some of our guys. Zach Harrison, he's a guy who started out early for us when was leading our team in sacks, but got injured a little bit later in the season, capped out at 4.5 sacks. Also, Brandon Dorless, he got some injuries at different points in the season, and ultimately, I think he came up with about 7.5, maybe 8.5 sacks this year. But we want to be able to have a little bit more depth there. Rukaroro gave us some great minutes, along with David Onyemata, but we want to get those young guys going for it. But you do still need that depth because it hurt us tremendously when some of those guys went down. Mikael London, he's a guy that was a former nose tackle. He lost a great deal of weight to be able to play more speed. But these guys that I'm telling you about that are nose tackles, these run stuffing nose tackles, big beefy guys, they are deceptively fast for their size. I say Vita Veas don't grow on trees, but these guys have a similar skill set to a Vita Vea. So I'd love for us to be able to re-sign one of those guys. I would love for us to be able to sign one of those guys if we're not able to re-sign David Onyemata. Maybe David Onyemata gives us a deal, but maybe he doesn't. But I do believe Tonga could be a very viable option for us. He could be a very he could be a discount free agent for us, a bargain deal, if you will. Uh, Again, also as well with Daquan Jones. Now there's some other edge guys, um, some guys who are edge players that are also really good against the run. Uh, Quiddy Pay. Quiddy Pay is a guy that I think could play some great minutes for us. And Draymond Jones, formerly with the Titans, he's a really good run stuffer, and he's a guy that's a little bit of a tweener, kind of almost like how Brandon Dorless is. He could probably give us some edge minutes. Uh, Definitely, he's more of that 3-4 traditional end as opposed to a straight up interior tackle, but we could play him on some of the passing downs as a pass rusher. And another guy that I would really like to see us maybe potentially go after is Jadeveon Clowney. I'm not sure what Jadeveon Clowney is going to command on the open market, but he cost tremendously less last year than say Leonard Floyd did. And Leonard Floyd is going to be up for a contract extension this year as well too. We signed him to a 1-year deal. Um, Deal was worth $10 million. Not sure that you want to pay Leonard Floyd $10 million to sit on the bench again this year. He started out as a starter for us, but at this point in time, there's really no reason that you wouldn't want to start Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. and start your season with them. Now, you definitely need some depth out there. I don't believe that we're going to be re-signing Arnold Ebiketie. I let him walk. So we could potentially re-sign Leonard Floyd, and why not sign Leonard Floyd and then also bring in a Jadeveon Clowney or somebody else like that? But there's a lot of edge talent out there. Probably a little less defensive tackle talent than there is edge talent, but those are guys that we could definitely uh, find ourselves looking to sign. And a lot of this list that I compiled, it came from Underdog Sports. They do primarily specialize in sports gambling and fantasy football, but they talk a lot of X's and O's, and they had some really great talent out there on the free agency list. Other honorable mentions that we had, well, I'll get into the cornerbacks first. Cornerback and wide receiver are the two biggest needs that I feel like I'd like us to go after in free agency. Jalen Watson is probably the de facto best cornerback that is available this year, unless you are considering Jamel Dean. Jamel Dean's a little older than Jalen Warren. He might command a little bit more. He's been injured some, but I would love for us to go after Jalen Watson. He was with the Chiefs recently. They got him as a bargain draft pick, but I would love to be able to bring him in here. it doesn't look like the Chiefs are going to be able to re-sign him. Also, James Pierre played with the Steelers this past year. He's a guy who is about 29 years old. I don't think that he's going to command a lot of money. He might be a little bit of a bargain, but again, Jalen Watson. I don't think his price tag is going to be quite so expensive that you have to break the bank for him. If we were able to get him, I think we might be able to get him on a multi-year deal for around maybe 11 or 12 million per year, which would probably be a steal. If we could get him on a 3-year contract, pair him up with AJ Terrell, he'd be a massive upgrade from what we have out there with Mike Hughes. And keep in mind, we do still have the ability to maybe re-sign D. Alford, who would be great. He's been much improved with the pass rush we've had out there, but D. Alford has had the ability to play inside and outside. And having those guys along with Mike Hughes would be a huge thing for us. You can never have too much cornerback depth. And Asante Samuel is a guy that we could get on a prove-it deal. He's been one of the premier cornerbacks in the league previously, and I don't maybe premier is a little bit of a stretch. I believe he was a second-round draft pick, but a really good cornerback. The only problem is that he got injured and he had a neck surgery that kept him out for a bit. Later in the year, he was released by the Chargers, and the Steelers picked him up, put him on their practice squad, and then eventually had him on the active roster. And he played some good minutes for them, played a lot of good, valuable snaps for them, and I believe he could play some valuable snaps for us as well, too. I'm not sure that the Steelers are going to want to re-sign him. They probably don't have the money to pay him, but he's going to be on probably a prove-it deal, and we might be able to get him for somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 million. I'll take that all day. Even if he does come in here and he gets hurt, I would take the risk. We saw that when we drafted Billy Bowman, that lit a fire under D. Alford's ass. And we need all the competition that we can get out here to take our team to the next level. I think that competition only begets more competition, only begets more production. You can never have enough hungry dogs out here on this team. Showing guys that they can lose their job on a team like this Falcons could probably take us to the next level. Real quick, we're going to hop into the chat one more time, see who's out here. Eric Mack says, I like the fact that Ian likes to build through the trenches. Me, myself, as well, my friend. I believe that's that Bill Parcells old school in them. They said that they come off of that coaching tree. Again, their coaches in college, Matt Ryan and Ian Cunningham's coaches. Remember, Ian Cunningham was a former offensive lineman. He said in the press conference he wanted to have an illustrious NFL career. He came in first year as a practice squad player and wasn't able to crack anything beyond the practice squad to get on the active roster. Right after that, immediately went into becoming a scout. But he understands the nuance and the necessity of building up front in the trenches. Matt Ryan is a guy from Boston in the Philly area. Stefanski from the Philly area. This is a hard-nosed, tough football team, or at least in concept, these are guys who believe in being physical and tough up front. And even Ian Cunningham, he's an Atlanta native. My boy said, my family has bricks in Centennial Park. He remembers looking at Bob Whitfield back in the day when we had the Dirty Bird going on. Jamal Anderson out there when we had the ground and pound. Unfortunate Super Bowl loss that we had, but that Falcons team under Dan Reeves was all about just pounding the football. And then shortly after, we had Michael Vick. Remember DVD, Don Vick Duckett. We wanted to run the football. I believe that we're going to go back to having a throwback football team, even though Matt Ryan, former league MVP in his Super Bowl year, he's always had a good rushing attack when he was at his best. And I believe that he understands that if you want to win, run game travels late in the year, and that just takes a lot of pressure off of your quarterback. And Michael Penix being still a young quarterback, that's where we need to go. I also believe that we're probably going to build through the draft by maybe trying to pick up or draft some type of lineman or somebody that we can uh, build up while we have Storm Norton, who is our swing tackle, along with Caleb McGarry and Jake Matthews. And those guys could also potentially uh, maybe do another restructure. I don't think that they're going to do a restructure because they've already done a couple of restructures, and McGarry just recently re-signed an extension. Now he might be willing to do a restructure. He was injured last year, uh, but those guys are they're in the largest parts, the most expensive parts of their contract right now, and again, there's no telling that they're going to want to do a restructure. But this team is definitely going to want to go out here and run the ball and play physical in the trenches. I believe that wholeheartedly, and that's the way you need to go if you want to be able to, go later in the year. You want to play in some of these colder weather climates late into December when winter comes, uh, late into January, February, early February. You want to get to those championship games. You got to be able to run the ball. You can't be no pussy out here. And I really like that that's where this Falcons team is headed in that direction. The defense also plays in that way as well too. We have a defense that's going to go out here and be able to play, play with leads. You want to stop the pass, and Jeff Ulbrich has not been shy about that at all. He wants to play the pass for first and foremost and stop the run on the way to the pass. We were not bad against the pass last year. I believe some people say that we gave up a lot of big plays later in the year. I believe that came about only because of Divine Diablo getting injured and some of our injuries up front. But when we've had all our guys out there completely healthy, this team has done very well at being able to stop the run. And I believe that maybe a linebacker or something like that in the draft could be in the horizon as well. I believe that we're going to try to re-sign Caden Ellis. And depending on what we do in the free agency, that's going to have a key uh, a key marker on how we move forward in the NFL draft uh, coming up soon. We do have the combine, and there are a few players that I really liked in some of the senior games and the All Star games that we had, the Senior Bowl especially. And in another video, I will tell you guys about some of the guys that I really liked out there uh, as options for us to be able to to draft at the running back position. I believe that we'll be able to get us a nice running back a little bit later in the draft. Now, Hightower talks a little bit about a few Falcons facts. He talks a little bit about some of Tyler Allgeier's work out there, and talks a bit about some of Drake London's skill set as well too. And Drake London's a guy that a few people have been like, oh, he's not the number one receiver. I saw somebody say trade Drake London or let him walk, which I think would be a stupid idea as well too. I'd definitely be trying to re-sign Kyle Pitts and re-sign Drake London. And I think that Drake London is a guy who's going to have a chip on his shoulder for the majority of the rest of his career because I believe that he's as good as a CD Lamb, who is a guy who reset the market once. And I believe he's as good as a Puka Nacua, if not better. And stay tuned for that video as well, too. I'm going to get you guys that video. I promise you I will get you the video where me and my father were talking about between Puka Nacua and Drake London. And you can even hear in the video when I'm talking to him in our discussion about he's kind of hesitating a little bit when I asked him why he liked Puka Nacua better than Drake London. He almost flip flops a little bit. So be on the lookout for that. But without further ado, I'm going to hit you guys with a few Falcon facts from the homie, Steve Hightower.
How's it going, Bird Bath? Point game official, SIBO, and all the subscribers and the people that we love most. This is your boy Steve Hightower coming to you with some Falcon facts. So let's go with the first fact. In 2002, Allgeier was the leading rusher for the Falcons. He had 210 carries for 1,035 yards. Okay, so that was actually the most yards by a rookie at the time. Of course, that's going to be for Atlanta. And this will be his first time being a free agent. So the question that a lot of people have is, should he stay? Especially with Bijan being so elite. My thing is that, yes, he should stay, but will he stay? They interviewed him, and he said that he always viewed himself as a number one. I mean, of course, coming to the league, you know, in your mind, you want to be a starter. Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants to be on the field, So that's how he views himself. But he's saying it's possible, but he's going to still entertain things. So this year, he actually had 143 carries, which was surprising. I didn't know he had that many, for 514 yards. And that's in 17 games. He had 2 starts out of that. So it's not as if he's not good, but that 1-2 punch can be very, very effective, and it is needed. And I think with the change, it might be worth his while to try to hang out and figure out what's going on. Second fact is in regards to the wide receivers for Falcons. Now, I know that if you compare this year to last year, they weren't as productive this year. The production really dipped. But you have to remember there were a lot of injuries, and that changes numbers, but don't give up, all you wonderful fans, because the receivers at least accounted for 1,811 yards on 143 receptions. So they still tried. And even though those numbers are low, because they only rank 28th and 29th in the league regards to what the receivers were accounted for and the yards that they had. The flip side of that is, your boy Drake London ranked 7th in the NFL, averaging 77 yards per game. So this year he had 12 games, 12 starts, 6-8 receptions for 919 yards, 7 touchdowns, okay? And he was targeted 112 times. So out of 112 targets, he had 67 receptions. So that's, that could increase. I'd like for that to be better, but he still did his part, so we can't even be mad at him, right? I mean, if it was smart.
So, there you have it. Those are the Falcons facts that we have out there. And again, Drake London, 7th in the league in yards per game, 900 yards on 68 receptions over just only 12 games. At a point in time, I think, was leading the league, if I'm not mistaken, at one point in time in yards per game, at least for a little bit. And when you look at some of the elite company that he's in, George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, those are 2 guys that are on a pass happy team. Jamar Chase, Puka Nakua. These are guys where they focus on passing the ball more. And even though we got beside ourselves a lot and we passed the ball far too much, we were not as pass happy as some of those teams. And Drake London has not been necessarily the focal point of our offense, commanding nearly as many targets per game as some of those guys were. And I believe that if you were to give Drake London the type of targets per game that you gave somebody like a Puka Nakua, oh man, you you definitely be seeing a lot better production out of him. I believe that without a shadow of doubt, Drake London is a top 5 receiver in this league, wholeheartedly. I'm gonna tap over here into the chat a little bit. Shout out to the homie Trenton. What's going on, my guy? #1 Falcons Bird Bath ATL supporter. He says we should be able to force teams into passing the entire second half. I agree with you. We can come out here and we can run the ball down their throat, especially if we're able to convince Tyler Allgeier to come back. And having Kevin Stefanski, I believe that play action is going to be open all day. Eric Mack says that he likes the defensive tackle. Eric Mack likes the defensive tackle from the nose tackle from the Texans, and I like him as well too. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but nose tackle, I believe that could be a huge place for us to specifically be able to move forward with. I definitely like our chances at nose tackle. I mean, I like what we could do if we got us another nose tackle. We don't even need an elite guy. We just need a little bit more of a rotational piece out there. So that's the direction I like to go in as well. Drop that name for me in the comments. Trenton says Allgeier isn't going to get the ball anymore than he does here. 3 games and 16 carries, another 6 with 10 carries, and he just scored the most of his career. I do believe, I believe that Tyler Allgeier could go somewhere else and get a lot more carries. I believe there are a few teams who would like to be able to give him the ball probably a little bit more. You look at a team like Baltimore. We got to see what happens with Derrick Henry. I'm not saying he's going to go to Baltimore, but a team like that would give him a lot of carries. A team like the Broncos. I said that I wanted to see us go with Who was that? It was J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins was a guy that was playing for the Broncos, and once he got injured, they stopped running the ball nearly as much. They didn't have as viable of an option out there. I believe that if Tyler Allgeier went somewhere like with like the Broncos, I believe that Sean Payton would love to use him a lot. You got to think back to when he had Reggie Bush and Pierre Thomas, and when he had Deuce McAllister as well. I believe that Sean Payton would make great usage of a player like Tyler Allgeier. Uh, wouldn't be surprised if he was able to go somewhere like the Rams as well. There are a few teams that I think would like to have Tyler Algier out there as a part of their rushing attack. I'm drawing a blank on a few other teams right now, uh, but I mean Minnesota. Uh, we ourselves could go after somebody like Aaron Jones, and I believe that the type of running backs that we would go after would be guys who don't command the ball, that don't need to be depended on as much as a full every down back because Bijan Robinson is so durable. So we could probably swap out Tyler Algier for somebody else like a J.K. Dobbins who hasn't been always as durable, a guy who can't take that load quite as often, or again, even someone like an Aaron Jones. But we do need us a between the tackle runner, and for that reason, that's why I like somebody like Brian Robinson, who definitely filled in very good whenever Christian McCaffrey got hurt last year. Also, Nick Chubb is a guy that I can see us going after as well too. The Houston Texans, they might want to go after somebody like a Tyler Algier. I think that they still want to be in a very much in a running back by committee style. Travis Etienne, he's a guy who I'm not sure that they're definitely going to re-sign him with those Jaguars. Brees Hall, he's a guy that's going to be on the market for free agency this year. Now, I believe that the Jets are probably going to re-sign him. They didn't trade him at the deadline, and they're very much in a position like how we are with Kyle Pitts, where they if they would have been foolish to not trade him at the trade deadline and try to get something for him. But again, there are some other teams that could utilize him. I wouldn't be surprised seeing him go somewhere like the Giants. If the Jets did let go of him, that's another option of a place where he could go to. Tennessee Titans. Wouldn't even be surprised if he went somewhere inside of our division as well, too, like Carolina. Rico Dowdle is a guy that's up for free agency. There are a lot of free agency running backs right now, and there's some guys that if we could get out there early in free agency, I believe that it'll just change the trajectory of our draft. Why not throw a little bit of money out here in free agency and max out as much as we can on short term deals, right? On short term deals, not necessarily long term deals. Maybe a few 2 and 3 year deals for a few veteran players at a bargain price. But I'd love to be able to have Tyler Algier come back. But as you saw in the video, Tyler Algier does fancy himself as a premier every down running back. He believes that he should get a full starter's workload. He sees himself as a starter. He was a starter before we got Bijan Robinson, and he's not a jealous guy. He's not a jealous guy at all. He understands how good Bijan Robinson was and what that means to have a guy like that out there. And that's kind of why he wants to get from underneath that shadow. Even though he'd be not being used on every down and that would save his legs, eventually he's going to lose a step or two. Being a running back in this league, you don't want to be a journeyman running back and you don't quite acquire the yardage that you would want later on. And if I'm Tyler Allgeier, if I can go somewhere else and get me upward of 10 million or better, I'd leave too. I don't think that the Falcons are going to give him a 10 million. Though, although I do wonder, I saw people saying we should sign David Njoku, and I talked about that a little bit earlier in the stream. I myself would rather sign Tyler Algier to that type of money than the David Njoku. I think that Tyler Algier would be a lot more effective for us and more valuable to this offense than a David Njoku because we already have a blocking tight end who, in my opinion, Charlie Warner is a guy that could get you 200 to 400 yards receiving if you threw the ball in. He's not a slouch at receiver as a receiving tight end. He's not what you want to lean on. And I know some people might think that you can have Njoku as a backup in case Kyle Pitts goes down, but there's really no replacing Kyle Pitts. There's not a lot of tight ends that can do that out here in the league, although we might be able to draft somebody. But we'll see what happens. We got to see where the combine is at. and even check out the national championship to see where some of those guys are at. I'm gonna take one more comment over here. Sheldon Rankins. Sheldon Rankins. That's right. Sheldon Rankins. Uh, Sorry for the disrespect, Mr. Rankins. Sheldon Rankins is a guy that we could definitely sign. Hightower mentioned him earlier this evening to me as well too. I'd love to see us be able to bring in Sheldon Rankins. That Houston, Texas front seven was really nasty out there. Daniil Hunter on one side and Will Henderson on the other side. They definitely were able to get after guys. And keep in mind, Nate Ollie was a guy who left the Texans. He was at the Texans before he came here. He was with the Colts, and then he was with the Texans. And everywhere he's been at, he's been able to get great production out of those defensive linemen. So I'd love to see Sheldon Rankins if we can get him for a good price as well, too. That's our time for today, guys. Stay tuned. Like I said, I promise you that Kyle Pitts breakdown and debunking of him being a bad run blocking tight end is coming. Uh, I stand on that hill. I will beat that drum and I will die on that hill if I need to. Kyle Pitts has become a better run blocking tight end and has also become a better pass blocking tight end as well too. And I have some film breakdown on that as well too. I want you guys in the comments, let me know what options you'd like to see us go with. If you made it this far and you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button for us, guys. We are just maybe 66 viewers short or 66 subscribers short of getting to 1,000. Help your boy get to that 1,000, man. I want to be able to go and buy some PFF, stats. I want to be able to have that PFF ranking because so many people believe in that PFF grade. And I can show you guys, hey, the grading scale says this, and then be able to hit you with a little bit of that game tape as well on the all 22, it just makes it all the more better. But helps out the algorithm for us if you hit that like and subscribe. And if we can get those subscribers up, we'll be able to monetize a lot better at that second tier. So salute to you guys. Appreciate you, Eric Mack. I want to bring you guys great shows every time. We're still in beta mode. We're going live. I am open to any suggestions that you guys have as well too. Let me know any topics that you guys want to have. I do read the comments, so please drop in the comments any topics you love to see me cover, any players you want to see me cover. In the off season, I can do a lot more film breakdowns on these guys. And let me know what you like and what you don't like and what you want to see more of on this channel. Simo to C Mitchell, checking out for Falcons, Bird Bath, or no longer Falcons Bird Bath, but Bird Bath ATL on Point Game Official. Doses.